Hello, welcome to a Friday Business News Report. It's now time to bring you the feature on the show today as we're looking at the state of the Nigerian economy through the lens of debt. Now, Nigeria's debt stock of 35.5 trillion naira will rise to 42.7 trillion naira following the Senate's approval of the federal government's request for $16 billion, 1.02 billion euros fresh loans, and the $16 billion $0.2 billion loan is equivalent to about 6.7 trillion naira using the importers and exporters window exchange rate of 411 naira 24 kobo to the US dollar, while the 1.02 billion euros is equivalent to 485.5 billion naira using the Central Bank of Nigeria's exchange rate of 476 naira to the euro. Now, these bring the value of the loans to be acquired at 7.2 trillion naira. The Senate on Wednesday approved the foreign loan plans of President Muhammadu Buhari, in which it sought to borrow the sum component of $125 million to fund some legacy projects. The Senate also approved the request of the Bank of Industries for the issuance of 500 million euros, but not more than 750 million euros euro bond in the international capital market. Well, joining me virtually to discuss this and much more, I have public finance and policy analyst Olusegun Elemo. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Shagun, this report once again has thrown into the populace a new conversation around the rising debts. Now, we have two schools of thought. Some say we need more borrowings to sustain the economy, understanding we are trying to maneuver through the times. Others are of the view that the debt threshold of crisis, which the government says we haven't reached, is a mirage, and revenue generation challenges cannot be removed from the current debt crisis that we have. What view do you share in terms of this required additional financing, in terms of having multiplier effect on stimulating economic growth, infrastructure development, job creation, poverty alleviation, healthcare, improve nation security architecture? We are all asking why. That's the biggest question we have for today. Do you think we have antecedents to say all of these monies would actually bear fruits and then we have a loan strategy repayment?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Those are valid points that have been raised by those responsible for taking the loans. Yes, with what COVID has done, and it's not just Nigeria that is borrowing at this time. I think there are many countries taking loans. Unfortunately, some of the countries we're comparing ourselves to are also holding, borrowings of other countries, which means that when you look at external debts, it can be looked at, for instance, if Nigeria is borrowing other smaller African countries monies, and then Nigeria is also taking loans from other bigger countries. So it can be looked at in that way. But I mean, to put in context what you just raised, there is infrastructure gap. Our healthcare system is in dire need of funding. The education system is there. There are many things calling for attention. And then, like you rightly said, the government says it wants to fund some legacy project. I think it's important to say that there's no problem borrowing, really. We only have problem when you are borrowing for inefficiencies, when you are borrowing to fund consumptions, when you are borrowing and you really cannot say exactly, whether you are, spending, efficiently. In that regard. And then another point that you raised is that, yes, we truly have, revenue generation mobilization crisis. And the last time, my organization sat with Fiscal Responsibility Commission to look at, some independent revenue that should come to government. And we're able to also point out that there are about 1.5 trillion of operating surplus sitting out there, and government is not paying attention to that. So there are all of those issues, and then again is that the loans we are taking, are we sure that we are spending efficiently? So there is that issue of expenditure efficiency, and all of that. We need to have all these conversations all together, so that as we are taking loans, there's no problem taking loans. If you are going to take loans to fund capital projects that will stimulate the economy, that will provide employment, and help revamp some of the critical sectors in the economy, yes, fine. But how much is it costing us to service it? And, like you said, what is the repayment plan? And do we actually have, structures in place within the country to ensure that the loans we're taking will be judiciously utilized? And then what are we doing to ramp up revenue, aside from just, raising tax and levies? I think those are the issues that...
And now, like you've also mentioned, and I've also highlighted, now there are more and more concerns around the loan repayment strategy. And according to the Senate, it says, well, the approval is to enable the executive commence negotiations and also looking at terms and conditions. That's one of the critical elements here in the scrutiny of this approval. But according to the World Bank, it says we have to take seriously debt transparency. What do you think the World Bank is speaking to, especially in the categorization it put Nigeria as low-income developing countries?
Well, it's more about, laying everything out, really. You see, for instance, I think we had this discussion one time. The GDP of the country is expected to grow to about more than $900 billion by 2026. But again, is that we're not doing enough, to scale up revenue. And for instance, when you look at some of the terms of these loans, even the National Assembly that gave the approval, it doesn't even know the details of the loan, and it goes to show that there is, some gap in oversight. And then, if World Bank is saying that we must, consider, debt, transparency, which means that we have to put everything out to say this is the position of the country, this is how much we're able to, this is how we intend to service this debt, and ultimately this is how we plan to pay it back, and these are the terms of the financing that is coming. You will be shocked. I mean, there was a time that the National Assembly was even trying to raise some issues with loans that were taken to fund railway infrastructure, and whether there are national assets that have been tied to those financing. If the government the federal government now, the executive, is going to take loans, I think, and they're sending a request to the National Assembly, I think it is the responsibility of the executive as well to put all the details out and let us know exactly what are the terms and conditions, for this financing. And like I said earlier, is that we're not even considering some of the solutions to these problems that we are facing. For instance, now, if you are taking loans and you are borrowing heavily, and then you are still, importing fuel, you are still, paying subsidy that is not provided for in the budget, you are still, engaging in frivolous spending as contained in the 2022 budget, you are still not, your investment environment is still not, optimal, like that, just the kind of environment we have to be able to attract those investors. Look at the security situation. And like I said earlier, the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007 has so many offenses, but there are no punishments. It goes again to show whether we are committed, to ramping up revenue. And then again, the audit bill was sent to the president in 2019 by the 8th Assembly. We don't know what has happened to it. So, are we committed to expenditure efficiency? Those are the questions.
I like the way you made mention of expenditure efficiency there. We have to follow the money. We have to be able to assess the impact. We have to look at the implementation index and all of these. If we have this clearly stated, then we know what exactly we are borrowing for, what it was used for. I hope all of these scrutiny also makes meaning as we are having the 2022 appropriation bill being presented. Also, it shouldn't just be a proposal of figures. We have to take seriously what each and every figure means. Thank you very much for your time on The Breakfast Show this morning, Olusegun Elemo. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.